whichever place you start as well, the question isn't ever, it's never, is there gospel need? Because there's gospel need everywhere. You go in Australia, throughout the world. That's not the question you're asking. The question you're asking is, how do I identify and articulate the gospel need here?
Hi, I'm Madeline Galea.
And I'm Derek Hanna.
Welcome to the Church Planting Australia podcast. We're on episode 3, and today we're answering, how do I decide where to plant? It's a good question.
It's a great question. And as you're thinking through this question, there's two parts to articulating and deciding this question of where to plant. One is a question of geography. The other is a question of people group. Who is you trying to reach? Now, for some, they're going to start with the people group in mind, who it is they want to reach, and then work out where it is they live, the geography. Other people, they're going to start with the location, geography in mind, and then identify the people who live in that area. So there's two parts of the question. You can start from either angle, but you do need to identify both.
Yeah. And so the Syncos are a great example of people who had a passion to reach a particular people group. So they had a real heart for Filipinos. And so then they're thinking, okay, well, where are Filipinos? And there's quite a large percentage in Blacktown in Sydney. So they launched a church plant there just last year.
It's just, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so they had a people group in mind, and therefore it influenced, okay, where do we live? Where do our kids go to school in order that we can plant a church here to reach this people group? And if you go the other way around, so you're thinking through, I don't have a particular people group in mind, but I want to figure out a location, then you're thinking through what's the current population of Brisbane or Melbourne. Where's an area that is going to have like exponential growth in maybe the next 10 years? That might be a factor why you might go to one location over another. Or thinking, if I want to reach Queensland, maybe what's a major city that's going to influence more of the state, for example.
And it can even be, when you're deciding around geography as well, it can even be things like gospel impact. Lots of places in the country which the population may not be huge and may not have a huge population growth prospect, but there's no viable gospel witness. And so that may be one of the ways in which you decide on geography. Yeah. But as an example of that, the Zylstras who went to the Sunshine Coast in a new area in Aura, they knew that was a growth area. They went in there and they have been working out what it is that people are grappling with there, what they're like, what the hard issues are, and how to reach them. So they just ask the same questions in a slightly different order in that.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter which order as long as you're answering both questions. If you pick a certain city, a certain suburb, understanding what are the cultural groups, the demographic, the social classes that make up this area, and how am I going to reach the people who live there? Or I really have a heart for this people group, where are they in Australia or anywhere in the world, really?
Our hope is that you're finding the Church Planting Australia podcast helpful and challenging and spurring you to think about how you could reach Australia through church planting. You can download all these resources and more in video form, on podcast apps, or on an ebook by going to genevapush.com/planting Australia. And whichever place you start as well, the question isn't ever, it's never, is there gospel need? Because there's gospel need everywhere. You go in Australia, throughout the world. That's not the question you're asking. The question you're asking is, how do I identify and articulate the gospel need here, or with these people? So as opposed to trying to play one culture off against another or one location off against another, that's not what you're doing when you're talking about your church plant or the possible church plant. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in another episode, because you're not trying to portray the need here as greater as opposed to somewhere else, and so portray this plant as more necessary than this plant over here. The real purpose behind asking and answering these questions is twofold. So let me give you two reasons why I think it is. The first one is this. You're trying to help people as you're building this picture see those around them through the lens of the gospel. So it's not a competition. The people you're trying to reach are not more lost than the people in the next suburb or the next people group. And we don't want other people who are coming to our plant, or those around us, to think that way either. If you're lost, you're lost. We have a bigger vision when we think about church planting than just our church plan. We know that all people everywhere need the gospel. All people need Jesus. They need to repent and believe, and we are privileged to be a part of what God is doing in this particular location. So the question is really one around clarity, of the who and the where question, of who am I trying to reach, not because they're more lost, but so I get clarity and can talk to other people about that clarity, so that the end point is people are reconciled to Jesus. That's the first one. The second reason is this. We're trying to help people see the need for the gospel in this particular local context. So get a missional mindset for this. Mission is not just something that happens overseas. It's not just something we pay people to go overseas for. And just because people are comfortable around us as well, and just because we are so affluent in Australia in most places, it doesn't mean that people aren't still desperately in need of Jesus. And so wherever you find yourself, whatever people you're trying to reach, whatever area you move into, you're trying to help people that you are leading and calling to both support the plan and join you in it, see that area through the lens of the gospel need there. How many people live there? How many people know Jesus? What are the gospel hopes and dreams that you have in planting this church and you want others who join you to have as well? The goal is not to create a sense of competition with other churches around you, nor to minimise the work that other churches might be doing as well. The goal is to engage the imagination with the possibility for what God could do in this area for these people at that time. That's what it's trying to do.
And we're going to take a moment now to pause and listen to Sarah and Josh Allen. So they planted a church in Melbourne called Laneway, and we're going to hear how they wrestled with these two questions.
Footscray is in the inner west of Melbourne. This area that we're in is a fast-growing inner city region, and people moving here from all over the world and also from within Melbourne and within Australia. Of the 90,000 or so local residents, perhaps only 10% even claim to be Christian.
As people move in, they're often at a point where they're quite open-minded. They're here to experience new ideas, new cultures, and to share stories and exchange them. They're also often coming very lonely and in need of help and friends, and this is a natural opportunity for the gospel.
So you'll notice as they answered that question there of the where and the who, that they started with the where. They had Footscray in mind, but they moved towards the who as well. They began to identify who it was that lived in Footscray. And Footscray is an interesting area of a whole number of people from a whole bunch of backgrounds. It's a beautiful place. But the two questions are connected, and one will flow from the other. The Allens' conviction was that there wasn't only one place to plant. They knew there were lots of places that needed the gospel, but their conviction was that the people of Footscray needed the gospel, and they got to put it on their hearts to go there and plant a church that might reach them. And since that point, God has used Laneway to reach many, many people in that area.
At this point, you might want to consider where you would like to church plant or who you would like to reach for the gospel. Join us for episode 4 on contextualization with the gospel, and that is the intersection of the gospel with the people that you're trying to reach. Go to genevapush.com/planting Australia. Join us for episode 4 as we talk through contextualization with the gospel, which is bringing, I can't say that.